I like to remind people of how old they're getting, so I'm going to start off with this. The Nintendo Wii came out in 2006. That was 19 years ago. And in case you're mad at me for reminding you of that, trust me, it makes me realize how old I'm getting too. Now, I never had a Wii growing up, unfortunately, but I had a lot of buddies who did, and I loved it. I think everybody who had one loved it. It was just an all-around great console. Now, what is crazy to me is that still to this day, 19 years later, people are still not only using the Wii, but they're using it for a kind of useful purposes, and with that, things are updating with the actual use of the console itself. Now, maybe not updating from like an official point of view, like Nintendo probably doesn't really focus anymore on the Wii with the Switch 2 coming out, but as far as like third-party support with the Wii, I'm talking kind of like a off-brand sort of software in terms of like jailbreaking your Wii, which I didn't even really know was a thing. Maybe that's not the right term for it, but yeah, that's what we're talking about. We're specifically talking about something called the Homebrew Channel. If you're familiar with this, you're probably shaking your head at me right now, but yeah, I didn't know about this. So I've kind of done a bit of a deep dive, albeit kind of a shallow deep dive, so take it as you will. But yeah, essentially the Homebrew Channel, I think it's kind of like the central hub of jailbreaking your Wii. So obviously it is very important to this community that is still active on the Wii, and they are using the Homebrew Channel. So that makes what I have to talk about here very, very important and very sad, very unfortunate. And that is that the Homebrew Channel is basically shutting down. So according to this post, it says the Homebrew Channel has ceased development. A developer alleges that key figures in the Wii Homebrew community actually stole code from Nintendo and other projects. And then they highlight here, before we get to the actual post by the Homebrew Channel, this quote that they did say. They said the Wii Homebrew community was all built on top of a pile of lies and copyright infringement. Okay, so then on this post, there was a screenshot of like another post that was archived, I believe, by the official Homebrew Channel. I'm linking this all in the description, so if you do want to read this in full without pausing the video, you certainly can. But essentially, they are talking about something called, and I am going to pronounce this wrong probably, libogc. Now, it sounds like this is kind of the life force of the Homebrew Channel, so it says, like most Wii Homebrew software, this software, so the channel, depends on libogc. After development of the Homebrew Channel had already started, we discovered that large portions of libogc were stolen directly from the Nintendo Software Developer Kit, or SDK. And then what's more is that libogc allegedly stole from another project called RTEMS, or something. I'll call it RTEMS. Essentially, RTEMS is an open source project, and allegedly libogc stole code from it. And if that wasn't bad enough, they basically wiped any credit from RTEMS. So then it says the current developers of libogc are not interested in tracking this issue, finding a solution, nor informing the community of the problematic copyright status of the project. When we filed an issue about it, they immediately closed it, replied with verbal abuse, and then completely deleted it from public view. So it says, for this reason, we consider it impossible to legally and legitimately compile this software at this point, and cannot encourage any further development. And then they go on to say that, yeah, the Wii Homebrew community was all built on top of a pile of lies and copyright infringement, and they say it's all thanks to Shag Kerr, who did the stealing, and the rest of the team. I assume Shag Kerr is like the leader of libogc or something like that. And then the last part there, it says, please demand that the leaders and major contributors to console or other proprietary device SDKs and toolkits that you use and work with do things legally and do not tolerate this kind of behavior. So a lot to unpack there. I definitely scratched my head at it for quite a bit. So if you're confused, don't worry. I threw a lot at you there. libogc, RTEMS. It just sounds like a bunch of RuneScape usernames. Like, what are we talking about? So essentially, as I understand it, the Wii Homebrew Channel, it is basically built using libogc, using the actual resources and tools that libogc provides. But the Homebrew Channel now discovered that libogc basically stole these resources and tools in two different ways. One was directly from these Nintendo Software Development Kits, which I believe is illegal, I think. And then the other was from RTEMS. They stole the code from them, and I don't know if that's illegal, but that's probably quite unethical. So in other words, let's say you're wanting to build a house and your buddy supplies you with all the tools, the hammers, the bricks, the lumber. So that's awesome. He did a nice thing. So everything's cool. the house is coming along just great. But then you find out that your buddy actually stole all the resources and lumber from the local hardware store, as well as old man Jenkins down the street who was working on his own project. That's what this is. That is why, unfortunately, the Wii Homebrew Channel decided to shut down. It definitely put them in a terrible, terrible situation. And I'm not very, tech savvy. I don't know how this stuff works, but I'm sure it was kind of irreversible. Like building a house, I don't think it's as easy as just, taking the structure of all of this code and just using another one, just swapping it out for another one. I don't think it's that easy. So it seems like that is why they shut down. Okay, so, so what? This is shut down now, or at least the development going forward is, how is this actually going to affect people going forward? Well, I did find this Reddit comment that I thought was interesting. I am going to link this as well. This was regarding this recent story, and somebody did say, at this point, I assume the state of Wii Homebrew is pretty much complete either way. So this poster says, I just jailbroke my Wii yesterday, and the majority of the software and tools have not been touched in years, probably since the mid-2010s, and the issue of concern now is that if these tools are going to get yanked either by the creators or owners or Nintendo getting a wild hair up its backside with this smoking gun, that could make things more difficult and more risky for people just getting into jailbreaking a Wii, since it is all conveniently centralized right now, and usually when such a thing happens, even if copies are preserved, they are scattered and potentially compromised with undocumented modifications, and that makes everything way more difficult to find. So essentially, what really stood out to me with that is that Nintendo could actually take issue with this now that they see that libogc is all allegedly structured around, lies and copyright infringement. Maybe now they will want to take a lot of these projects offline that use libogc. I'm no lawyer, but I would assume that legally they would probably have a good point here if they wanted to take it that far. But since this is all going through the Wii system, I don't know if it is as simple as just Nintendo taking it down themselves. I don't know. So this is very, very bad, unfortunately, for the jailbreaking community of the original Wii. There's still a lot of questions, like how did the Homebrew Channel discover all of this, and what will libogc do going forward, but the state of the Wii jailbreaking community and the environment around it, it seems like this, well, unfortunately, it's going through a pretty crazy time, and I think going forward, it's going to get even crazier.